about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
All right, we are back at the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877 Doc Dahlia, 1-877-DOCDALI. So Santa Trump had come up with a brilliant idea. I think it was his idea. Could have been Scott Bessent's, but the idea of money being given to children born within his presidency, that, and hopefully it gets extended beyond his presidency, where $1,000 will be deposited into an account. And this account will grow, not be able to be accessed by the parents. This is for the child. And then it grows like an IRA, and the child can access it at the age of 18 for certain things, college, etc. And after age 18, it acts like a typical IRA. So whereas most of us who were Gen X's or baby boomers or older millennials were like, okay, well, I got to get a job to get an IRA, but if I'm self-employed, I have to figure out how to do my own Roth, or I have to do my own, 503B or whatever. This is already a head start. Now, of course, there were always critics. Critics are like, oh, well, now taxpayers are paying for this. Doesn't seem like they are. In fact, what Trump has been doing, whether it's the ballroom or whether it's for some of these other things, he's getting private investors to pay. And so we're being told that Michael Dell, founder of CEO of Dell Technologies, and his wife, Susan, has pledged $6.25 billion to support a new federal savings program for these children called Trump Accounts. Now, this was all a part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Every child born between January 1, 2025, so kids born this year, through December 31st, 2028, gets a one-time $1,000 government deposit at birth. Families can open an account once the child has a Social Security number. Funds cannot be withdrawn until the child turns 18. I'm sure, God forbid, something happens to the child. There is, a process, of where the funds go. But parents and relatives could actually contribute into this account up to $5,000 annually. The cap may be adjusted for inflation after 2027. And in fact, I think employers, according to the IRS website, I think the employer could also, I believe, put up to $2,500 per year. I have to look at what employer contributions could be. And so this can be huge. This, can be huge. And this money is not coming from taxpayers. It's coming from what we understand, donors. Now, not only could this help the children born between 2025 and 2029, because it ends, I think, December 31st, 2028, but apparently the Dell family also is going to contribute $250 each to accounts that could reach kids age 10 and under who were born prior to the qualifying date for the federal newborn contribution. Now, maybe tax dollars are a part of this. I don't know all the details, but I love the idea that there is this concept of kids learning early on about investment, about how the market works, about how you need to save. I had saved up any allowance I got, and then my family needed the money, and they took it right before I had to move out. And I moved out anyway, and I think it was because they didn't want me to move out, but I then got a job. Luckily, I got a scholarship. I got, I think, a $500 scholarship from Alexander Dawson for my academics. And I got, I think, a $1,000 scholarship from Sierra Health and Life for academics. And I was able to use that money, to then go to school. Then I got an academic scholarship to UNLV. I worked multiple part-time jobs, and I was able to, but imagine if I had something like this that I could access and tap into, and when a child is 18, there's less parental fingers involved. And that could be, I mean, unless, of course, the child is, still living at home and, who knows what happens then. But this can really change how the younger generation looks at money, saves, and feels like that now they have a little bit of a safety net. They say even without additional contributions beyond the federal government, the Treasury estimates the account could grow to between $3,000 and $13,800 over 8 years. Now, somebody could say, well, if nobody's putting money in, that $1,000 by the time the kid's 18, with inflation, is it going to be worth? Hey, at least it's something. At least a child has something. And then if they do get a job or something, then they can, put into it. From a political standpoint, Trump, as I said, when you look at the psychology of what happened with the first presidency and when he left, one thing that really angered Trump is so much of what he accomplished, and he thought that would be, in perpetuity, was reversed by the next president. And so having something that has his name on it that parents are not going to want to have reversed or anybody touch, that's going to, kind of secure that legacy. And it's about time somebody is thinking with a head in money. And another thing Trump had also suggested in his latest press release is that the tax refunds are going to be bigger this next year because the tariffs. He's going to be giving some of that money back to the taxpayers. His vision when he started his second term. Oh, I apologize. We got some sound here. My bad. His vision was to eliminate the IRS and just have an ERS, External Revenue Service, where revenue would be coming in with other countries to the point that we don't have to pay taxes anymore. And so if voters notice that they're getting money back, they're going to be pretty happy about that. Now, somebody could say, well, gosh, this is socialism, or this is, people starting to get dependent on the Treasury, and not exactly. This isn't universal income where we're just going to keep paying to support you. We're going to give you a head start, and it's going to be across the board, and see what you could do with it. So I think it's brilliant. I'm really, really excited about that. In fact, I wish I could have another baby really quick so I could, get started on this, but can't. Shop got closed up. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away. Right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. Big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So yesterday was the Tennessee Congressional District 7 special election. I think that that district has about 800, close to 1 million voters. Only about 100,000 voted in this last election. Now, I think 1 in 8 voters voted in the New York City mayor race. So I guess, mid-election, mid-cycle, that's an average showing. But leading up to this election, it was very, very close, between obviously the two candidates. You had Matt Van Epps, West Point grad, U.S. Army Corps of Engineer, Army combat helicopter pilot, and he was up against Afton Bain. Afton Bain has really grown into what people now call the AOC of Tennessee. And she got a huge following, and her following was such that even though a few years back in a 2020 podcast, she was talking about how much she hates Nashville and hates country music, people still voted for her. Well, the polls were saying it was tight, neck and neck, and they were saying she's going to probably win. So what did we learn from this election? Well, the actual results it was still closer than I think a lot of people expected, but it was still a very, very comfortable win for the Republican Matt Van Epps. This was a Republican district. No shock there. He got 96,988. Actually, that's interesting. They were saying, I apologize. Actually, it looks like close to 180,000 people voted, a little bit more. So 96,988 votes. As of, I think 98% of the votes are in, so they're still counting these projected winner. Afton Bain got 81,000 votes, and then there was an independent, John Thorpe, who got under 1,000 votes. So it was 53.9% of the vote to 45% of the vote. So what did we learn? Well, in a very Republican district that was held by, I think, Representative Mark Green, who left to go to, I believe, private industry and vacated the seat. I don't really know all the reason behind that. You guys might know more than I do. There came this special election. Then there's going to be another special election when Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene leaves in January. But with this, the polls were showing it was neck and neck. He wins by a resounding lead. So what does that mean? Well, is it like what happened with Kamala Harris? They were saying Kamala Harris is a surefire win. She's going to win this, and she didn't do as well. So, are these polls, really representative? Is there bias in the polls? Are people thinking that their response is not going to be private and they don't want backlash? But, we keep seeing the polls, get things wrong, except for Zohran Mamdani. That was, and so how I look at like what happened with Mamdani versus here is if there is a huge lead, we're talking football field lead, I think the polls are pretty indicative. But these polls say it's raised within, the media say it's raised within. Is that because they want to get people out and vote? And that is something that happens. The psychology that happens, during a lot of these elections. When 1 in 8 people voted for the New York mayor race, you would think more New Yorkers would be concerned about what's going on in New York. But a lot of people don't vote. Either they don't trust the system, either they're lazy, either they feel their vote won't count. They feel their vote is going to be used against them if somebody reads into it or investigate how they voted. And so a lot of people choose not to vote. I can't think of all the reasons why. I would, as an American citizen, want to vote. But also what was interesting, the other things that we pick up from this is early on in the evening, Afton Bain was far ahead, was in the lead. Now, that was possibly from the mail-in ballots and the early voting. So it kind of tells us that the early voting, the mail-in ballots, seem that it for Van Epps to win, it must have really taken people coming to the polls. And that kind of seems to be a trend where you see with the Democrats, the mail-in ballots and the early voting seems to be more of a focus on and then many of the Republicans go to the polls to make sure their vote counts. So it looks like you still had a little bit of that sentiment. Another thing that was really interesting that I took from this is somebody who actually, said in 2020 that they hate Nashville. You would think that'd be disqualifying. Right? I mean, if somebody said I hate America, they wouldn't become president. You would hope they wouldn't be. I don't want anybody to become president that hates America. I want somebody to become president that loves America. I want somebody to become mayor, who loves our city. I want somebody to become, then Mamdani, because how did he win? Well, he won because New York is too damn unaffordable. Republicans have been in charge, Democrats have been in charge, and so a socialist getting involved. I know he's a Democratic socialist, but some people are like, well, let's just shake things up and see what happens. And he expressed how much he loves New York, and he, whether it was sincere or not, that was a message he sent. Afton trying to say, well, I had an issue with the Bachelorette, and I had. That's not very convincing. But the fact that she still got 80-some thousand votes with people knowing that she was throwing, shade, she was talking crap about Nashville. That was not, I'm surprised that didn't affect more people. Unless, again, it's all about the cause. People were so anti-Republican that they didn't care that somebody who basically hated that state at one point, maybe she doesn't anymore, but somebody who hated that city, hated Tennesseans, hated the music and the culture when Nashville is the country music capital of the world, for them to vote still for that, it kind of shows how, other very, very bad leaders got into power. And you really got to vote for the person. You really have to think about those. And maybe she did repent. I don't think she ever said, guys, my bad. I was on a podcast. And maybe she, I don't know. I don't recall hearing an apology, but what do her constituents want? Well, they want to know that somebody appreciates what they're about. They want to appreciate the economy, what's their culture, and, appreciate the cops, appreciate the law enforcement, appreciate the first responders, which is something that she didn't do. So if she failed this campaign, was it a numbers game, or was it, some of the things that she had said? Another thing we learned is millions upon millions of dollars, and we're going to get the final tally in the next few days, was pumped into this election, a special election in a red state, just like if this happened in a blue area of California. I mean, you would think it would be a done deal, but millions upon millions of dollars had to be put into this. We aren't even at the midterms. Another thing we learned is, when you say, well, somebody's a socialist, maybe to baby boomers and traditionalists and Gen X's, we're like, that didn't work. But to the younger generation, or to a lot of people, they're like, and what? Is it bad? I have heard people just spew out of their mouth, we need socialized medicine. Like, do you understand what that is? Do you understand how these other countries, their healthcare systems are failing? You're not going to be happy. But people want something different. If they can't afford gas, if they can't afford, it was interesting. I was driving down the street, and there's all these Circle K's that are open now. And one of the Circle K's said their gas was at $6 a gallon. I think that's a typo. And I wanted to go in there and say, guys, your gas. I was late, to the studio, so I was like, I'm not going to say anything. But people want gas prices down, and they are coming down. In this administration, which is great. But if you can't afford a house, if you can't afford your own savings account and your own IRA, if you're not going to have a job because AI is taking over, you don't care what the person's philosophy is. You just want somebody to fix it. And what this is indicative of is, remember we talked about that Scottish professor, I got to give credit where credit's due, where he talked about that cycle. Let me see if I have time to bring that up. Oh, I don't. We're at the end of the segment. But he said basically that many democracies fail after a couple hundred years because people who have abundance start to get complacent. Then when they get complacent, they start to lose things and become impoverished. Then they become dependent on the government. Then they become enslaved to the government. Then there's a revolution, and so we're right now at this attitude where people are like, you know what? Jesus, take the wheel. I need to be able to afford rent and food. And you're going to see more and more people, whether they're called socialists or not, move in with promises. 1-877 Doc Dolly. Don't go away.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799 and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So, I think it was about a year ago. Yeah, I think it was about a year ago. One of my listeners asked if I could list the disabilities that would qualify and make him a better candidate for a job. Because after he would apply for a job online, they would ask what his gender is, what his pronouns were, and then if he has a qualifying disability. And he's like, I always say I don't have a disability, but I do have irritable bowel. I do have carpal tunnel. Should I say I do have a disability, and then maybe I'll get the job? And yeah, I told her, I mean, listen, okay. The list of disabilities would be listed under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And I'm very frustrated with the way the situation has gone because, originally it was horrible where people who had a disability were shamed, you couldn't get a job, you were unhireable, discriminated against. And luckily we're a society today where we want to give people an opportunity because people with a disability can still be amazing, productive workers, even better than some of these individuals that are blessed with great health. But it's gone the other way. In fact, there's a headline that caught my eye with Daily Mail saying 1 in 3 students, a third, in top colleges are claiming to be disabled so they get extra time to complete exams. And one, I guess, was allowed to bring his mommy into class, into the room. Bring his mommy. Now, my children would not bring me into the classroom because they know I'd be like, just let me do it. Let me take a test. I love tests. I love school. I always have. I would be like, I wouldn't be sitting there in class going, can we have a test? But like Monica on Friends. But I was like, I want to prove myself. I'm like, look, I've been here. I've been listening. I want you to know, teacher, that I know my stuff. I know it. So let me show you that I know it. And I always raise my hand. Actually, I didn't always raise my hand. I blurted out the answer. The teacher's like, Dolly, you need to raise your hand. I know the answer. We know you know the answer. In fact, one of the biggest compliments I got, I think it was first grade or second grade, where I knew the answer. And I was like, oh, call on me. And the teacher looked at me and she goes, I know you know. And then I was like, Then I was able to relax the rest of the class. I'm like, she knows. I'm sorry. This is why people hated me in school. But this isn't anything new. I saw this in academia also. If somebody had dyslexia, ADHD, if they didn't get accommodations when they asked for it, all hell could break loose. And so students were encouraged, so nobody would get themselves into trouble. saying, look, if you need accommodations, if you have a disability, if you have a learning disability, if there's something, auditory processing issues, if there's anything that you have, we, through the ADA Act, are supposed to provide accommodations. Well, now it's gotten to the point where 1 in 3 students are taking advantage of that. According to The Atlantic, the number of students with disability accommodations has doubled and even tripled at some top universities. Get this, at Brown and Harvard, 20% of undergrad students are registered as disabled. 34%, 1 in 3 students at Amherst are said to be disabled. And the colleges are fine with that because they want to show that they're diverse. But where I have a problem with it is, what if, somebody is truly disabled? Do they get the opportunity that they were promised to get? And then it almost diminishes and dilutes we don't want people faking it. Now, mind you, ADHD can be disabling. They could struggle to learn. But it's, what happens when you have individuals that really, really need, they don't have an arm, or they're deaf, or they're blind, or they're, are they going to be, assumed, that are they going to get any, extra help or accommodations or even opportunities when you have other people saying, yeah, I need that. I have irritable bowel. I have to keep running to the bathroom. Now, irritable bowel is debilitating, but if you're going to expand that list to everything, anybody can say, yeah, I have depression, I have anxiety, I get triggered. We're talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis. There's going to be a test on the Cuban Missile Crisis. Well, I have family that's Cuban, so I need accommodations. And if a teacher questions it, they could get in trouble. You don't mess with the ADA. So they say the rise appears to stem from an increase in students receiving diagnoses since the Americans with Disabilities Act was amended to broaden the definition of disability. When the law was first passed in 1990, it required institutions to provide reasonable accommodations to people, according to Daily Mail, with a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or major life activities. But in 2008, it was amended to include people with ADHD, anxiety, depression, and widen the major life activities. So as opposed to you can't drive or you can't walk or you can't, if this disability impacts learning, reading, concentrating, and thinking. And so, now you're looking at, what's happening in medical schools? Well, medical schools have to follow the ADA. So if you have somebody that cannot take a test in an adequate amount of time, if you have a child or a student that gets very anxious, that gets very depressed around test time, as a medical school, you can't say, you're going to have a tough time being a doctor. Are you sure this is the right field? You can't say that. You have to ensure that that person gets everything they need to be able to do that test. And I support helping people that have mental health issues, depression, anxiety. But when I look back at my training, and I'm not saying that training was done well, 36-hour shifts and attendings yelling at you and smacking you with instruments and one cutting me and stabbing me with a needle. Training was ridiculous when I went through it in the 90s, but I'm still grateful I got an education and I'm amazed at what I learned. And I have no regrets, where I trained because I'm really, really happy with my breadth of knowledge. But if I would have said there, in a code, I'm getting triggered, I can't help, I don't know if I would have passed. Now, we don't want somebody who will freeze, we will then, if you are not capable of performing that code, we are going to replace you with somebody. But there was nobody around in the hospital. We were really understaffed. I was first assist on surgeries. I delivered babies. I delivered twin breech by myself. We did not have enough staff. And if I had all said, you know what, I got a bad period cramp, I had to work through period cramps. I had to work through migraines. We just had to work through it. I had to work through hypoglycemia. I had to work through fibromyalgia. I remember I fell on a patient. My knee gave out. I fell on a patient. I was limping. I was your knee's good. Get back to work. I had pneumonia. I had a really bad pneumonia. I remember people said I looked green, but I couldn't take off, and I wore a mask. And I remember sitting there in a lecture, and the attending is like, take off that mask. And I'm like, but I have pneumonia. And they go, you look stupid in it. You're going to scare the patients. And now everybody's in masks. You walk into a bank with a mask. So, it does kind of bring up the question. If people need all this help to get through a task, are they, what? Well, segment's up. We'll talk about this a little bit. 1-877 Doc Dolly. All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. So a question that keeps coming up to us doctors is, does my 1-day-old infant or grandchild need to get a vaccine right as they're coming out of the womb? And the vaccine that the infants are getting on day one is the hepatitis vaccine. With the hepatitis B vaccine, we give it to them at 1 day, and then 1 to 2 months, and then 6 months. And it's a series of 3 shots. And it is the soonest, earliest vaccine. We also give vitamin K to make sure they clot appropriately. But the hepatitis vaccine has been a little controversial. Now, from a safety standpoint, I have never seen an infant have an issue in my training getting the hepatitis B vaccine on day one. But you have a lot of parents going, can't I wait just a little bit? They're less than 24 hours, breathing, the same air we breathe. Well, they do. They get, oxygen through their in the womb, but still. And I get how parents are a little nervous about that. Well, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices is meeting this week, and we don't have a lot of details, but they are going to discuss, among many of the vaccines, if the hepatitis B vaccine needs to be done on day one, or can it be done when the baby's a little older. Now, you've heard people say, and I remember kind of thinking the same thing when I was in training. I'm like, well, the child's not having sex, the child's not doing drugs. Do we really have to worry about, hepatitis B that soon at the 1 day? But one thing that I noticed is when my child got bit at daycare by another child that broke the skin, I was like, whoa. All right, he may be too young to have sex and do drugs, but another child biting him who could have hepatitis B, which is a lifelong illness that could cause liver disease, liver failure, cancer. Oh, hell no. And I made sure my kids got their hepatitis B vaccinations done before they were 2. And so all the other vaccines they got relatively on time, but I had held off in the beginning. And the reason why is both children had, both of the babies kind of had some complications during pregnancy. And I was like, I want to watch them. I want to assess them first. I want as few variables. I promise I'll get them their hepatitis B vaccine. And they did. They got them. But I was like, I had wanted to wait. And luckily, back in the early 2000s, they let me do that. Parents asking to wait, sometimes they don't get as, enthusiastic or as supportive a response. And so parents have been kind of asking what, and I've told you my opinion. My opinion is I think the hepatitis B vaccine is safe and it's fantastic. But I do understand the desire to wait until that child is a little older in order to feel more confident that their immune system will provide an appropriate response. And, if you're really kind of concerned that 1 day is just a little too young. We haven't had data at this point that I'm aware of saying it's, not a good idea to do, which is why we do it. But one thing that this administration is doing, which I support, is they're going to reevaluate the science, make sure there is enough data. So they say it's not clear what's going to be voted on, but they say past comments from Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and ACIP members indicate that the universal hepatitis B vaccine dose given just after birth will be discussed. This is being reported by ABC News. So, according to Dr. Fiona Havers, a former CDC official, says the universal hepatitis B birth dose has essentially eliminated 99% of hepatitis B that we've seen in children. They said if you get hepatitis B as an infant, you are extremely likely to have it to be lifelong, incurable infection that has a good chance of leading to liver failure, liver cancer, and potential death. So where doctors argue is, but what if this child gets hepatitis B from the parents? Well, we screen all moms for hepatitis B. All pregnant women get screened. But those are people that make it to the doctor. I can't tell you how many women I delivered where I was like, who is your OB? Who do you want me to call? Who, where was your prenatal care? And there were many individuals that didn't get any prenatal care. We run the hepatitis B test when you get admitted, but if you're giving birth, you might not have gotten that care, or you might not have that protection. Also, what if dad has hepatitis B? And so, he has an open wound, child's bleeding from a scratch. Can hepatitis B be transmitted? It's rare, but it can. So, if the ACIP votes to delay the shot to a later age, some doctors are like, no, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let the current guidelines stand. The problem is the system is a little broken because we have a lot of parents freaking out about that day one shot. And when they say, no, just wait, then, we want to, in the long term, see, I like to play the long game. Yeah, I understand short-term gains, may make some people happy and satisfy some people, but I like the long game. And pediatric vaccination is very important. We don't see polio killing kids anymore to the degree that we did, thank God. We are not seeing all the, I had a relative die of tetanus years ago, decades ago. I mean, we are not seeing, luckily, these types of illnesses and this type of pathology affect the younger generation. Now, are other kids getting side effects from these vaccines? That's what obviously we need to always reevaluate. And so people say, well, Dahlia, they give kids vaccines at 2, 4, 6 months. Why don't they just wait with hepatitis? Well, because it's a lot of vaccines. And parents are already kind of shaking when they see all the shots lined up that their child has to get in their thigh. And if you can, shift one of them to a different day and a different time, it also, many medical providers feel that will kind of help commit the parents going, well, the child got one shot, so they have to finish the series. It was interesting. When we adopted a dog, we took the dog in fact, before we brought the dog home, we brought the dog to the vet for the vaccines. And the vet had given, it wasn't they got the rabies, but there was also, I believe, it wasn't the flu shot. I forget, I forget which, parvo. I think it was one of the illnesses that dogs get that's deadly. And she said, now remember, if you don't bring the dog back within that 21 days, we got to start the series all over. We're like, okay, yes, ma'am. We got it. Thank you. We got it. But it's like, you're kind of committed. And so, many medical providers have been very, very comfortable with let's get them started. We know they're going to have at least some protection while they're here, while it's safe. So, I will support what the ACIP says. It's a very daunting process when a parent has a child and they want that child protected, but they're making a decision, where any vaccine could possibly cause a side effect that makes them nervous. And so RFK Jr. promised there'll be the transparency. Parents will be able to see the safety results, the studies, and so something like this, I think, is necessary. Let's reevaluate. Let's see if there's, can parents have a choice? Can the child be started on their hepatitis at the 2-month mark, or give parents a choice at the 1-day-old mark? But I'm fine with them evaluating and looking at the science. The 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away. Hey guys, it's Dr. Dahlia. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our fantasy football pocket guide for beginners found on Amazon, or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
Increase fuel economy up to 7.9% with Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme. The solution to maximize your engine's performance and fuel economy. Whether you're driving a sports car or a daily commuter, Gasoline Extreme is specially formulated with PEA to deep clean. Don't settle for an average driving experience. Upgrade to Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme and go further on each tank. Order now on Amazon or HotShotSecret.com. Hot Shot Secret. Powered by science.
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed, put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American Magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive the stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.
Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
You are about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Doc Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. So when Trump won in the first election, and then when he won in his second election, you heard from celebrities where they were saying, we're out of here. If Trump wins, I'm leaving. I am leaving. Well, nobody really put their money where their mouth was. Ellen DeGeneres did. Rosie O'Donnell did. Ellen DeGeneres went to the Cotswolds in the UK. Rosie O'Donnell went to Ireland. And, I mean, I've been a fan of their work. I understand Ellen DeGeneres had, issues later where, there was, she was accused of toxicity in the workplace. And, but I thought she was fantastic with Dory. I think she was, I really enjoyed her show. Rosie O'Donnell, I've been a fan of for years. In fact, Rosie O'Donnell, I credit saving a lot of people's lives, because when she told us that she had helped a woman out of her car and then she thought she pulled her shoulder. She had, I think, left shoulder pain. And then she checks in with a cardiologist the next day and they're like, you had a heart attack. I've been bringing that story up to everybody to tell them to protect their heart. A left shoulder pain might not always be an orthopedic issue. It could be a heart attack, neck pain, tooth pain. I had a patient that came in with a tooth pain. I couldn't see any pathology, so I decided to check their heart. He had a heart attack the night before. So, yeah, I credit Ellen DeGeneres and Rosie O'Donnell with some things they've done. The idea I'm going to leave, at least they put their money where their mouth is. But was that dramatic? Was it, a statement? Everyone has a right to do that, but we're being told now that Ellen DeGeneres is probably coming back. And from what we hear, they've had a beautiful, she and Portia, her wife, beautiful mansion in the Cotswolds in the UK, but I guess it keeps getting flooded. The winters are not like, sunny California. From what we understand, they want to come back to California because they miss their friends. And we might not get all the details, but it sounds like they did put their house on the market. They're in another house because that first beautiful one keeps getting flooded. And I mean, the winters are rough. Living in England is not for the meek. They got rough weather. It's fog. It's gorgeous. I love the country of England, but it's not going to be like Southern California. So interesting that Ellen DeGeneres is coming back. On the same note, Rosie O'Donnell, and this I think is a little sad. Rosie O'Donnell says that her daughter, I think she has a 12-year-old daughter, has been very frustrated, has been, I guess, slamming her fist on the table, upset about Trump. Damn him, damn Trump. He made us move in order for our own safety, and it's now he's destroying the country. And so Rosie O'Donnell's child doesn't seem to be happy with the move. That child doesn't seem to be happy with them having left. Now, Ireland, I would love to spend some time in Ireland. I think, wow, I haven't been to Ireland yet. I'm really, really excited. Definitely want to go to a pub and hang out. Every Irish person I meet, I love. I'm just, fascinated by the people, the culture. But, I mean, these stars kind of drag their family into a lot of their decisions. And this child does not seem to be happy. And maybe Rosie O'Donnell is bringing this up on the Jim Acosta show because she is going to now need an exit plan and say, look, I had to come back. My child was unhappy. And, you hear what's going on in some of these other countries. Like a close friend of ours said that they lost their relative in El Salvador because when the militia came in and wanted that person to shoot fellow villagers, and they said, no, I'm not going to kill friends and family. No, they stood him in the line and killed him with everybody else. I mean, these other countries, they're, and I'm not saying England and Ireland is like that, but people acting like Trump coming into power, the world is going to fall apart. That fascism is going to come in there. And I understand, for some, people who were illegal immigrants, they do fear, being deported and going back. And unfortunately, that's a fear you have in Canada. That's a fear you have in all countries. If you go into their country illegally and you don't follow the process, Canada's strict. You get deported. And so I understand people are fearful of that, especially now that the ICE is trying to get rid of the criminals and a cartel and individuals who came here that weren't vetted. So, but this country is nowhere like other countries are, and we have a lot of issues where we need to be more safe. We have people attacked. We have illegal immigrant truck drivers getting into accidents and killing people. I mean, there are things we need to fix. I would not leave America. I'm still grateful. I think America provides amazing opportunity and safety and freedom. But, when you see these people leave so publicly and then they're not happy or their family members aren't happy, maybe we need to kind of tone down the rhetoric. And I understand people want to express themselves. It's very dramatic to say, I don't like the president and I want to leave. And as I said, Rosie O'Donnell and Ellen DeGeneres, they get credit for putting their money where their mouth is. Now, they left. They said they were going to leave. I think Richard Gere said he wanted to leave and he would leave and he didn't. So they put their money where their mouth is. But when they come back, when they talk about how, their family isn't happy, it's, you have a choice to live. And, you have to follow the laws. You have to go through the proper immigration process, if you are going to want to, live in the UK or live in, the Ireland or whatever. There's a process you have to follow, just like there's a process you have to follow in America. But I don't think people understand how scary it is in some of these other places. In Gaza, under Hamas rule, you can't be openly LGBTQ, AI+. Gay pride parades, very proliferative in Israel. In Israel, you have freedom to be LGBTQ, AI+. Over the border in Gaza, Yeah, and so these are things that I think people take for granted. And in America, I get, somebody might not like the president, but is it really worth leaving? So it'll be interesting to see, what Ellen's, shall we say, experience was. But it sounds like she's coming back. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away. Back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Doc Dolly, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, the Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So we have big pharma, big tobacco. We got big food. And whenever there is a big company like that, or a big industry, or a big giant, they're going to have some splaining to do if bad things happen from some of the products. Big Pharma got nailed for the narcotic overuse, and they got, I think, in some cases, wrongly blamed for the fentanyl crisis, when many of those cases, I think, came from drugs from other countries and criminal organizations. But Big Pharma was, targeted because of many of the medications that they made that people used and abused, or was a gateway to becoming addicted to narcotics. And Big Pharma got their butt handed to them. Big Tobacco got their butts handed to them on a platter with the tobacco and the marketing and the targeting, and then Big Tobacco's influence in vaping. Well, Big Food is now being targeted. San Francisco attorney David Chu is now suing some of the largest manufacturers because of their ultra-processed foods. The lawsuit targets processed food giants including Kraft Heinz, Mondelez International, Post Holdings, the Coca-Cola Company, PepsiCo, General Mills, Nestle USA, Kellogg, Mars Incorporated, and Conagra Brands. According to KRON San Francisco, the suit alleges they are behind the proliferation of ultra-processed foods in the American diet. The lawsuit maintains that this has led to a host of serious health conditions, imposing untold health care costs on Americans, as well as cities and states across the nation. These companies, the suit goes on to allege, knew their products were making people sick, but continued to devise and market increasingly addictive and harmful products in order to maximize profits. They say these companies created a public health crisis with the engineering and marketing of ultra-processed foods. Chu said they took food, made it unrecognizable and harmful to the human body. And he says his companies engineered a public health crisis from which they profited handsomely. The lawsuit seeks to hold them responsible. He says San Francisco families deserve to know what's in their food. We're not going to let our residents be misled about the products in our grocery stores. We are going to stand up for public health and give parents the information they need to keep themselves and their kids safe and healthy. So the lawsuit that was filed in San Francisco Superior Court yesterday defines ultra-processed foods as former whole foods that have been broken down, chemically modified, combined with additives, and then reassembled using industrial techniques such as molding, extrusion, and pressurization. That sounds disgusting. Examples of such foods include candies, chips, processed meats, sodas, energy drinks, boxed macaroni and cheese, breakfast cereals, and other products made using industrial methods that cannot typically be replicated in the home kitchen. The lawsuit, I remember my mom saying, I'm going to make burgers. I'm like, I want McDonald's. I was a little, and we would get McDonald's once in a while as a treat. And I really hated her burgers. She goes, I'm going to make the burger taste exactly like McDonald's. No, it didn't. It was fresh, probably healthier, but it didn't taste like McDonald's. The lawsuit seeks restitution and civil penalties from the defendants, as well as enjoining the defendants from what it calls deceptive marketing, requiring defendants to take action to correct and lessen the effects of their behavior. All right, so what then happens to us? Okay, so I'm mixed on this. On one end, he's not wrong. I mean, there's a lot of manufactured crises, and some people say, "Oh, yeah, look at what we're doing to ourselves." I know there's snowstorms, some of the worst snowstorms, but there's climate change and global warming, and I understand that you need to keep your voters engaged, and so when you keep coming up with crises and manufacturing these death, do or die scenarios, it keeps voters engaged. But this fake food epidemic I've been talking about for years, and it's ridiculous. And when was a sugary cereal considered a balanced breakfast? But the ads say it is. They're fortified with nutrients. It's part of a balanced breakfast. I remember the ads in the 80s where you would see a glass of orange juice, you would see a bran muffin, you would see fruit, you would see, and they would say this is a part to make it look like you're sitting there having nutrition. Special K. You'd see all these, thin people eating Special K. Wheaties. You'd have Bruce Jenner, now Caitlyn Jenner, on the Wheaties box. And so marketing, making you feel like, well, I'm going to be an Olympian if I'm on Wheaties. Or I'm going to look like her if I eat Special K. Right, Special K? It is deceptive. And when you look at the products, what the hell are in these products? But then on the other end, the average consumer should know that that's not a fruit, a vegetable, lean meat, avocado toast. That's not, we should have the education out there. And the average person should know that if you eat, some fresh avocado on a piece of wheat toast, that's going to probably be healthier and less full, have maybe less processed foods unless your wheat toast isn't really multiple grain wheat, and it's white bread, than, eating some sugary cereal. I also like this because California, as well as all the other states, need to stop allowing this type of crap food to be on the SNAP benefits. And so if there's this lawsuit saying these are bad, they hurt you, they're causing, a rise in obesity and diabetes and heart disease and anxiety, depression, dementia, colon cancer, then it's going to be a lot harder for the state of California to say, yes, you could use your SNAP benefits for those foods. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. The money's supposed to go for nutrition. On the other end, what could happen with this lawsuit? Well, if we are going to blame the companies, and if these companies knew their products were making people sick, if they continue to devise and market increasingly addictive and harmful products, there's a case. And I'm sure we're going to start to see big food settle these cases. There's a case. However, if these companies are now going to be, well, in the hole for billions of dollars because of these lawsuits, what happens to the foods you and I are buying? They go up. And when people are trying to say that Trump is responsible for the high prices, even though the prices went up, exorbitantly during Biden's administration and after COVID, and because people are paying, they're paying this kind of money on Apple phones and electric vehicles and airline flights, but if food prices go up, that's going to be a problem. Now, their food prices for junk food. People should not buy the junk food. They should just buy the healthy food. Don't buy that. If your cereal is $7-8 a box and it's not healthy, why are you buying it? But we are addicted. We're addicted to the taste. And this lawsuit can actually kind of bring awareness to you're eating fake food. You're eating unhealthy food. Now, do I like a ding dong every now and then? Yes, I do. Do I like a cupcake? Will I drink a diet soda once in a blue moon? Yes, I shouldn't. But sometimes I'm like, look, I don't want to have a real soda, but I need, the little bubbly. And so I want there to be that access. But I got to tell you, I don't buy a lot of diet soda because it's too damn expensive now. The prices are up. Now, when it comes to an election, people are like, oh my gosh, a 2-liter bottle of Coca-Cola is $2.99 when it used to be 99 cents. $3 for a 2-liter bottle of Coke. That's Trump's fault. And so there could also be the secondary gain of now these companies are going to be charging more for their food to pay for the lawsuits and to pay for the bad press that now the grocery store food prices can go up. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But what I want as a doctor and as a parent and as a voter is stop marketing and manipulating our food. Let us have access to healthy food, and we as humans need to be more responsible with our food choices. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Hi guys, Dr. Dahlia here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdahlia.com. Check it out.
Lisa Wolf here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you. And be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
This is an urgent announcement for anyone that's $10,000 or more in debt. Before you make another minimum payment, you need to know there are special programs that can completely free you of your debt. Total Financial Freedom can help you become debt-free in months instead of years. Resolve your credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and timeshares. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020 for a free consultation. For 16 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands get out of debt. You can feel confident when calling because Total Financial Freedom is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Battling for years and years, stuck in the endless cycle of minimum payments could take decades. You have the right to get your debt resolved and substantially reduce your monthly payments. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020. That's 800-878-6020. 800-878-6020.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Dali, 1-877-DOCDALI. So some of you have inquired about what is going on as it pertains to these pro-life pregnancy centers and this case that has made it to the Supreme Court. So apparently First Choice Women's Resource Centers, many of them offer pregnancy services. I believe they're a nonprofit. And they are pro-life. Some of them are near abortion centers. Their services include pregnancy testing, ultrasounding, medical consultation, pre-abortion screening, and abortion pill reversal. One of you had asked, what actually is an abortion pill reversal? Well, according to their website, they say, according to the National Institutes of Health, progesterone shots and high-dose oral progesterone could be effective. The reversal rates for shots were 64% and 68% for the oral progesterone. But if you started the misoprostol to help evacuate the pregnancy, it may be too late to use the abortion pill reversal method. But these First Choice Pregnancy Services, from what we understand, customers or clients have said, is they're able to confirm their pregnancy. I don't know if they do blood tests there. One complaint was they only did the urine test. I like the blood test. I always, as a doctor, do the blood test and the serum HCG, so I can't confirm if they do the blood test. But they say they do the pregnancy testing. They do the ultrasounding. There's a medical consultation. So it sounds like there are medical professionals there. But apparently there was a center in New Jersey that was allegedly targeted. And not by violence, but in terms of evaluating them for donors. I think let me see if it was. I want to give credit where credit's due here. I apologize. This is the New Jersey Attorney General's office. Has been accused of a fishing expedition because they felt they had an ample basis to initiate an investigation. They had concerns about donors being misled, unlicensed medical practices, violation of patient privacy, and, quote, potentially misleading or untrue medical statements. Now, when Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice, because this has now made it to the Supreme Court, because the nonprofit fought back saying there was a subpoena from the Attorney General's office requesting that First Choice turn over the names of its donors to investigators, alleging that the organization could be defrauding them. They said the subpoena, affected the First Amendment rights, not to mention affected the privacy of people donating to First Choice, a pro-life nonprofit. And so First Choice did not turn over the names, and then it has now, First Choice sued back, and now it's made it back to the Supreme Court. And one thing that Chief Justice Clarence Thomas said is, have you had complaints? He said, we've had no complaints. So there was no damages. There were no complaints about First Choice. Nobody said they felt defrauded that we know of legally. But the lawyer for the Attorney General said state governments and federal government initiate investigations all the time in the absence of complaints where they have a reason to suspect there could be potential issues of legal compliance. Now, if you do have a medical clinic that is not following HIPAA laws, is not following OSHA laws, yes, you can have OSHA, and these government agencies will investigate and check for the cleanliness, make sure you are doing everything to standard. CLIA lab, in order to do lab testing, you have to have CLIA standards. And owning a medical clinic, there were tons of red tape you had to go through and make sure. And I appreciated that, because knowing that there were other clinics that did sloppy work, patients come first. But there were no complaints. There were no damages. Nobody got hurt. And so are they targeting a pro-life nonprofit? Now, as I've always said, patients have to have a transparency. So let's say somebody does not believe in giving birth control. It's against their religion. that patient should be aware that their provider is not going to provide that service before that patient pays and goes into the room and all, so there should be, that transparency. And First Choice, says they're offering, well, look, if you think you're pregnant, we can confirm that. We can evaluate the pregnancy. We could provide consultation. And we can, provide, counseling. I'm, concerned about where we've gone in terms of, when I talk to young girls who call asking for birth control, but come into my office going, I want birth control. I'm sexually active. And I'm like, now, are you going to be using a condom? They're like, no, that's why I'm here for birth control. I'm like, but you need to use a condom because you could get an STI and STD. Then I explained to them STDs and all that, saying, yes, I'm going to provide you birth control to help protect against pregnancy, but you're still going to need to use a condom. You have to be, many of them didn't know that. And then, all right, now what's your plan if the birth control doesn't work? Birth control is 97% effective. Some cases, 98% effective. What's your plan? What do you mean? I could still get pregnant on birth control? Yeah. What if it doesn't work? What if you miss a pill? What's your plan? Oh, well, then abortion. That's your plan? Yeah. It is an option, but I don't think people understand the magnitude of a decision such as that. And so, having treated a lot of postpartum depression, it was very interesting to see some cases, not all, but some cases of postpartum depression. Postpartum depression is where somebody after birth has issues bonding with the baby, depression, anxiety, mood swings. Now, I got to tell you, I hardly slept. I was bleeding. But I felt good. I was very, very lucky to not have depression. But some individuals can be so depressed after the birth that they could go into psychosis. And there's been some moms that have almost hurt their baby or hurt their baby. The crying won't stop. I'm so sleep deprived. And so that's why a pregnant mom or somebody who has given birth needs that support, and the dads too. You got to be there for the parents and try to offer help, and it's asked if they need help. But some of these cases where were not necessarily hormones or sleep deprivation, but these moms said, I never thought I would give the abortion I had a second thought until I held this baby. What did I do? And I would have to help them or get them counseling because they were now haunted with a decision they had made months or years ago with a prior pregnancy. And I asked, after your abortion, what support did you get? Nothing. They're like, you're good. And there's no after support. There's no somebody checking on you. That's a concern. And so you have a lot of people that feel guilt. They feel like one patient says she feels the soul of that baby haunts her. And she doesn't know how to deal with that. And so I told her to talk to her priest, and she said, well, I can't. I had an abortion. I'm like, well, talk to clergy, talk to a counselor. And we got her in with a counselor. But nobody talks about that. Nobody talks about abortion regret. We understand that abortion is sometimes done for the life of the mother, sometimes done because of incest or somebody was attacked or raped, but for those, who chose it, and didn't get the support afterwards, why aren't we explaining to them, the ramifications and making sure they have support, and options discussed? 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away. We are back on the Dr. Dolly Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Doc Dolly, 1-877 DOCDALI. So here's some breaking news, which actually ended up better than you would think. Apparently, there was a man that opens fire inside a crowded Metro Atlanta restaurant, according to WSB TV. He starts shooting inside a crowded restaurant called Chiquitos Cantina and Grill on Old Salem Road. He fired several shots, and then the customers turned around and pulled out their own guns. The bystanders returned fire, pushing the male outside of the restaurant into the front of the parking lot, according to Captain Contavious Garcia. And police said the gunman fired more shots from outside. You could see the bullet holes in the restaurant's front door. Thank God no one was shot or hurt in the restaurant. Officers called in Rockdale County SWAT team to look for the shooter. They surrounded a house less than a mile away on Oak Forest Drive. SWAT officers walked 3 people out of the home. Police confirm that one of them was the suspect. They have not released his name. But good for these good Samaritans, and it sounds like it was more than one, to pull out their firearms to protect the others. Yeah, I hear this time and time again. There was a shooting, I believe, in an Oregon mall where there was somebody that came in with a machine gun or a AR-15 style rifle, and somebody who was an off-duty, I don't think it was an off-duty police officer. I think he had military experience and he had a weapon, but he was off-duty. He made himself seen, but he buttressed himself and positioned himself behind a column, and he let the suspect know he had a gun on him. And then the suspect, rather than continuing to shoot, decides to pull the weapon on himself and kill himself. And that, off-duty person with a gun was able to protect everybody there in the mall. And I hear that, and God bless our police and God bless our first responders, but individuals being able to neutralize a suspect, that have training, that care about others. Now, I love these people with CCWs, these good, wholesome Americans that are, there to protect others. Mind you, you have bad people out there that get a hold of somebody's gun, take their mother's gun and shoot up schools. I mean, there's bad people out there. But when this is one of the reasons why, we have CCWs and why we have, laws protecting our Second Amendment rights. Because those individuals would have been sitting ducks, especially the unarmed individuals. So way to go for customers at Chiquitos for protecting, their fellow customers. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOCDALI. All eyes are on this case. A Texas A&M University student found dead after a tailgate. And the mother said, even though the police say they do not suspect foul play, more of an accident, the mom says the daughter's phone was thrown into the woods. Now, Brianna Aguilera, 19 years old, was found dead on Saturday at 12:47 a.m. at 21 Rio Apartments in Austin, Texas. Now, this was following that huge Texas A&M University of Texas football game. According to Fox News, Austin police say her death is not being investigated as a homicide and no foul play suspected. Aguilera's mother, Stephanie Rodriguez, disputes that. She said her daughter fell 17 floors and that she disagrees that the death would be accidental or suicide. She does not think her daughter was suicidal. And the phone was found inside a purse that was thrown in the woods. Now, she was calling her daughter after, I think, 6 p.m. and didn't hear from her daughter after 6 p.m. The mom said she called a bunch of her friends. No answer. She got a hold of the girl's boyfriend, who then gave her the numbers of friends and other people to call. But she couldn't reach her daughter, and the phone was inside a purse that was thrown in the woods. She said they found my daughter's phone eventually in her friend's purse. In her friend's purse that was thrown in the woods. Now, former NYPD Inspector Paul Morrow, who's also a Fox News contributor, said the mother's statement obviously raises questions. There's some questions here. The main one that jumped out at me says the fact pattern that we know is that her phone was found at a friend's purse in the woods at a distance from where the body was found. Now you have to say to yourself, what is the fact pattern that led to that? None of the people inside the apartment complex would answer the phone call. So she doesn't think it was accidental. She said, somebody killed my Bree, gave all the group of friends a lot of time to come up with the same story. My daughter would not jump 17 stories from the building, and to be labeling this as a suicide is insane. This is really frightening. Now, Rodriguez told KSAT that there was a fight between Aguilera and another girl before her daughter's death. She said there was a fight that happened between my daughter and another girl. They were all staying in the same apartment that I actually have text messages of, and the detective, she said, just disregarded them. How is that certain friends left immediately? She was living at the apartment complex, vacated her apartment ASAP. The mother told KGNS she became suspicious after she saw her daughter's phone was on Do Not Disturb. She said, no one reached out to me. I was the only one who had to place several calls to Austin PD because I couldn't locate her. That was weird to me and skeptical that the phone was on Do Not Disturb. We always had this rule that if she was going to go out, she had to have her phone on location on and answer her text to at least let me know she was okay. That stopped at 6 p.m. She says, I'm thinking that someone either shoved her over the balcony, or when my daughter does drink, she has a tendency to fall asleep. She's so thin and frail, she cannot handle alcohol. And I think that maybe either it might have been that, or they probably got scared and threw her off the balcony, or they shoved her off. So, there's, this is frightening. Now, I'm sure law enforcement is doing a thorough investigation. I'm sure Austin PD knows what they're doing. But there's a lot of kind of strange facts and strange things that need to be pieced together. Obviously, who owned the purse? Why was the purse there? I mean, question that person. There's DNA evidence. There's, how many people send their kids off to college? And these kids drink. I've been watching a lot of college football. I think that Texas A&M game, there were over 100,000 people in the stadium. Over 100, I think 110. Wow. I went to a Raiders game at Allegiant Stadium. There were 60,000 people there. These college games really know how to get, they're huge, especially in the Midwest. And then, of course, the tailgates at the party, I participated in those too. A lot of fun. But to think that your daughter could be with individuals who possibly either saw the accident or could have contributed to the death, and then nobody's being available and nobody's talking. What the hell? I mean, was it an accident? Was it and the idea that, well, everybody's going to, say the same story, and that might work at first. But if police are suspicious and they do think a murder happened, then then they have a way to, get people to talk. Not I'm saying, by a severe, painful interrogation, but they can, fish out flaws in everybody's story. Not everybody is going to always, especially if they were drunk, say the exact same thing. And if they are, meek on the same details, that's suspicious. So it'll be interesting to see what the police come up with, but it's just frightening to think that this could have happened. And I love the fact that we have location services, so I know where my kids are and my kids know where I am. I think that's important, but for that to be turned off, that's scary. And I understand a lot of kids might not want parents to know where they are, but this mom's scared, and she lost her child. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Can you believe, with all the recent violent protests, looting, and destruction, some areas are considering either defunding or abolishing the police? At a time when America's neighborhoods need the protection of police the most, some elected officials would rather create more chaos by playing politics. If you're sick of elected officials caving in to demands of the radical left, you're not alone. It's time we stand up and declare our support for local police. The majority of police officers are important partners in protecting our God-given rights. If you prefer freedom over chaos, then learn how you can help protect the local police that serve your community. Call today and request your free Support Your Local Police info packet. Dial 800-JBS-USA-1. That's 800-JBS-USA-1. Request your free Support Your Local Police info packet by calling 800-JBS-USA-1 today.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Dahlia. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our fantasy football pocket guide for beginners found on Amazon, or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.